And all the while, tens of thousands of nameless children still wander through the ruins looking for their families. As he travels through Germany, a British major writes, "The most astonishing thing is the total absence of men between 17 and 40. It's a land of women, children, and old folk." The husbands, the sons, the fathers, they're all dead, either that or interned. Because the Allies are still holding almost 11 million prisoners of war. And that's expensive, so they have to earn their keep. They're shared out among the victors, and they're set to work rebuilding the countries they've helped to destroy. They're like modern-day slaves, rented out for starvation wages. In Great Britain and in France, the authorities subject more than 1 million German prisoners to forced labor. To pay off their debt, prisoners sometimes have to do dangerous work. They're made to clear of their minds all the zones that have been booby-trapped during the occupation. It costs many of them their lives. To face up to their crimes, some are forced to exhume the mass graves of their countless victims. The victors are settling accounts with the losers. At the same time, they're governing a divided Germany and all the millions of prisoners. Pretty soon, it all gets too much for them. How are they to repatriate the millions of displaced persons that the Reich has rounded up from all over the continent and who all want to go home? The Jews and political deportees still languishing in the camps. The prisoners of war spilling out of the stalags. All the Nazi regime's forced labor conscripts who are now abandoning their factories. And then there are all the civilians who fled the combat. In total, the war has led to the displacement, either by force or by their own choice, of nearly 40 million people throughout Europe. It's a jumble of different nationalities, all tramping through the total devastation. In the heart of Germany, whole columns of them stream across a makeshift bridge. More than 2 million Russians, 1 million Poles, 330,000 Czechs, 600,000 refugees from Central Europe are all heading east. At the same time, more than 2 million French, 570,000 Belgians, 400,000 Dutch, and 420,000 Italians are heading west. As an English journalist puts it, you see the whole history of Europe out on the roads of Germany. It very soon becomes a nightmare for the Allies to have this human tide sloshing freely around. Because a lot of these refugees have just one thing on their minds: revenge. On their way home through the villages of Germany, these victims of the Reich leave in their wake an ever wider trail of theft, rape, and destruction. Locals are even leaving the white flags hanging at their windows. Pillage is endemic. Russians, Poles, and French all go at it to their heart's content. It has to be stopped, observes a British captain. Everywhere, the war has sapped all human dignity. In the newly liberated death camps, many of the prisoners have started inflicting rough justice on their former captors. One deportee admits that, "When I was freed, I reckoned we should have wiped the whole of Germany off the map." Some Nazis try to escape by blending in with their victims. The GIs asked the former prisoners to identify them, and sometimes they let them have their vengeance. One Holocaust survivor reveals that the Russians gave us 24 hours to do whatever we liked with the Germans. At Dachau, the SS guards are all killed. As another survivor puts it, "It was good, I liked it. At the time, nothing could have given us more satisfaction. It was perhaps the sole thing that made it worthwhile to have survived the war, being able to allow ourselves that." The killer's accomplices are also punished. In the Dessau camp in Germany, a lot of them are identified. One important witness to it all is photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson, who immortalizes the scene. In these images, a Gestapo informant is confronted by a woman she'd denounced. It's all getting urgent. These people have to be returned home quickly. And that's a risky business, because they could all be carrying an invisible scourge, typhus. The Allies set up roadblocks everywhere, and there's one order of the day, DDT, a powerful insecticide. DDT powder, says one man. In our faces, down our trousers, in our ears, up our noses. You could taste it. They drowned us in it. Everyone the Americans have deloused is issued a card. Pretty soon, the French won't let anyone across the Rhine unless they've got one of them. The Holocaust survivors have no idea how they'll get home. They're too weak and sick. At first, the Allies can't even understand what tortures they've been through. For although the majority of the Reich's prisoners have survived, only 2% of Jews have escaped the programmed extermination. There are no plans for taking care of them. So the Allies improvise, feeding them whatever they can. Within 6 weeks of the Bergen-Belsen camp being liberated, 13,000 deportees have died either of typhus or of malnutrition brought on by food too rich for such walking shadows. Some weeks after the victory, survivors are still wearing their hideous striped fatigues and still dying.
A history-making moment as Lord Halifax calls for a standing vote on the approval of the Charter of International Organization, and the heads of the 50 United Nations delegations rise to be counted. The vote is unanimous. The charter of a new world is born.
Although chaos still reigns over in Europe, in San Francisco, the United Nations ratifies its charter of the 26th of June 1945, by which its members intend to ban forever war between nations. the UN will ease the suffering of the old continent. Its relief agency, the UNRRA, sends essential supplies such as potatoes, cooking oil, meat, soap and clothes for the millions of displaced persons. Thousands of abandoned children can now rebuild their lives. Smiles now light up all those faces that had lost, in the torment that had surrounded them, all trace of hope. The UNRRA organizes them into groups by nationality and arranges their return home. Little by little, the railway tracks are all repaired, and the first trains set off for all the cities of Europe. It's a convoy of hope, bringing with it the promise of seeing one's loved ones again. Some of the tears being shed are now tears of joy. It's a miracle of organization. 1,500 planes have been pressed into service in the West to take 36,000 people a day safely home. In Brussels, in Paris, in Amsterdam, Moscow and Prague, they're coming home to an ecstatic welcome. One corporal, back from 5 years of captivity, writes, "There on that platform, I found all that was dear to me, my wife, my daughter, my whole life. It hasn't really sunk in yet that I'm a free man now." One woman tells how she will never forget the moment we ran into each other's arms. Such incredible happiness, tears of joy, such a wonderful homecoming. And his little girl that he hadn't seen since she was just a year old and was now 6, threw herself into his arms saying, "Daddy, Daddy," as if he'd never left. Behind closed doors, though, these homecomings are sometimes bitter ones. These men coming home are like strangers to their own families. The liberation sees an explosion of divorce all over Europe. And while some come home to their families, others find nobody home. It's particularly painful for the very few Jews who've survived. They're in such a pitiful state that shelters have to be set up for them. Those who return to Paris are lodged at the Hotel Lutetia, the former HQ of the German Secret Services, now a hostel for the homeless. On one wall are pinned hundreds of photos that simply say "missing" along with a name. For many, the joy of getting home is a momentary one. All their loved ones have disappeared. One deportee, Louise Alcan, says, "There was no joy left. We were bringing too many dead people home with us." These survivors will be haunted for a long time by what they've been through. Nazism may be dead, but anti-Semitic hate lives on. Long after the war, Eastern Europe is still ablaze with pogroms. The most terrible of them is at Kielce, just 200 kilometers from Warsaw. It all starts with an 8-year-old boy running away and accusing Jews of having kidnapped him. In reprisal, 42 Jews are killed and 80 others wounded. Women, soldiers, and policemen are all part of the mob.
Mord kielecki wstrząsnął sumieniem świata. Te kobiety przeszły przez gehenny obozów niemieckich i dziś w zaraniu odrodzonej wolności straciły swoich najbliższych. Straciły ich z rąk ludzi, którzy mienią się Polakami. Nie możemy zrzucić z siebie odpowiedzialności za tę zbrodnię, która rzuciła cień na dobre imię Polski.
According to one Polish Jew, it felt like we were living on shifting sand. We wanted to get back to living like human beings. The pogrom at Kielce shattered all our illusions. We just couldn't stay there a moment longer. But where are they to go? Many head off in search of asylum, like these 900 orphans, Czech, Polish, Hungarian, all from Buchenwald. They're all full of hope for a new life in the West. The governments of Eastern Europe let them leave, not too unhappy to be getting rid of their Jewish minorities.